Hello again everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are taking a look at the Got Friends PZL-104 Wilga. For those of you who are perhaps unfamiliar with the 104, the Wilga is a Polish short takeoff and landing or STOL aircraft designed for civilian utility and originally manufactured by PZL of Poland. The package here comes with both the 35 and the 80 series variants of the aircraft. The package also comes with a number of nice additional features, quite a bit of utility to be had out of the Wilga. As we've seen from other Got Friends products, the quality of the add-on is very nice, and of course I'll be aiming to demonstrate that in the video today. Got Friends were kind enough to reach out to me asking whether or not I would like to take a look at the add-on, and certainly having really enjoyed their Discus 2C, I was very keen to do so. As ever though, I'll give you both the good and the bad points of the product as we go, and we'll be aiming to carry out a full review of the product here today. As with the Got Friends Discus 2C, this package also includes an additional scenery in the name of Forward Farm located in the UK. So we're starting our review off here. We've currently got the aircraft just outside the hangar. We're first going to take a look, as usual, at some of the aircraft's additional features. After that, we're going to be heading over to Switzerland. We're going to be taking the Wilga on a flight from Buttwil over towards Granchen, but we can talk more about the flight itself later on in the video. As always, I do hope you enjoy the video, and indeed the flight. If you do, then please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. As I say, we currently have the aircraft just outside the hangar at Forward Farm. As you can see for yourselves, Got Friends have done a very nice job on the aircraft in terms of the detailing visually, and that level of attention to detail pretty much carries throughout the entire product. The 104 does have a couple of little tricks, a couple of little party pieces up its sleeve, so we'll first take a look at those before we continue on with the rest of the aircraft. Obviously, one of the trends that we've seen more and more within Microsoft Flight Simulator, especially with the high-level fidelity add-ons, is additional features that you might not necessarily expect. And in a similar vein here with the Wilga, we get a couple of features which, whilst they don't directly serve any purpose, I think they do demonstrate the level of care and attention that's been put into the product. The additional equipment included does have a little bit more functionality than being purely eye candy. Firstly, if you're a musical genius like myself, then you can actually play the guitar. There's also the option to add or remove a drink from the cooler box. You can also move the pan up onto the burner, turn the burner on and cook yourself some dinner. The fishing rod can also be removed from its case. And finally, you can also pack or unstay the hammock. Of course, none of these features directly contribute to the flying experience of the aircraft, but nevertheless, I think they're nice to have. They've certainly been very well done, some nice effects there as well. And once again, since the product is done to a very high quality throughout, it doesn't feel as though Got Friends have been spending their attention in the wrong areas. Internally, it is much the same. The quality of the cockpit is excellent. We'll obviously be taking more of a look at that during our flight. The aircraft comes with multiple variants. We've discussed already you get both the 30 and the 80 series of the Wilga. Further to that, you get regular tired versions, tundra tire versions, both skis and floats, as well as a number of different avionics setups, as well as both a Polish and an English cockpit variant. The add-on also includes an onboard clipboard, much the same as we've seen from many other add-ons in terms of an onboard EFB. Here there are a number of options, again very typical of what you'd see from a high fidelity add-on in the sim. So we can choose to toggle on or off engine realism, as well as a smoke generator. I haven't actually tried the smoke generator myself yet. We can individually unpack the hammock. We can also hang a lantern off the wing, which we didn't take a look at there. We can unload the cargo, which you've already seen. We can choose to show both the pilot and the co-pilot internally. You can add or remove a pitot cover as discussed. You can also place the aircraft shocks. Those can also be actuated using the park brake command. And finally, the Wilga actually uses pneumatic pressure to start the engine, so there is an onboard air cylinder, and if you need to, you can refill that here via the clipboard. Down the back we have our luggage. Again, those are the items that we looked at externally. Those can also be visually toggled on or off using the sim's fuel and load menu. Setting the luggage load to 0 will remove the visible luggage, and then you can fold up the rear seats as you wish. As you would certainly expect, both cockpit doors also open and close, and they can also be removed altogether using the emergency jettison latch. As well as the retro variant of the aircraft which you've just seen, there is also a more modern avionics option. There's also a midlife variant which we'll be looking at in our flight later on. The more modern option here obviously comes with an electronic attitude indicator as well as an onboard GPS. The modern version of the aircraft is the only one to come with a GPS, so just bear in mind if you're not all that comfortable with visual navigation or, for example, ADF and VOR navigation, then there's really only one variant of the aircraft currently which you'll probably get some utility out of. Similarly, both the early and the later variants of the aircraft come with an onboard autopilot. It appears though that the midlife variant does not. Very nice of course though to see the multiple variants, and again we'll be looking at the midlife variant in just a moment's time. So through the magic of the Sims World map, we now find ourselves on the ground at Buttwil in Switzerland. As I mentioned during the introduction, we're going to be taking the aircraft here on a short flight from Buttwil over towards Granchen. We're going to be tracking via the Wilga VOR, so it should be a good option here to test out the aircraft's avionics a little bit as well. For our flight, we're going to be looking at the midlife version of the aircraft, the 80 variant of the Wilga. Probably my personal favourite variant overall, since firstly it includes the English cockpit, and secondly the 80 variant has quite a bit more power versus the 30 variant. Worth noting as well, the livery we're using for our flight today is actually a third-party livery available over on flightsim.to. I'll leave a link down in the video description below. So the livery may not be 100% representative of Got Friends' work, but certainly it's very nicely done, as are all of the default liveries. The paint scheme is representative of a real-world Wilga based here at Buttwil, so I thought it'd be good fun to make use of it, and a very big thank you to Dreadwings Aviation for all of his hard work. Our flight should be quite a scenic hop. It's fairly short, around 17 miles inbound towards Wilga, and then about 20 miles outbound towards Granchen. As usual, we'll be carrying out a full flight here to try and get a good feel for the aircraft's overall level of fidelity, and I'll try and demonstrate as well the 104's stall performance coming towards Granchen later on. If I do butcher any of the name pronunciations here or along the way, I do apologise. It's fairly typical when we're flying elsewhere in the world. Anyway, a very cold and snowy day here on the ground in Switzerland, so surprisingly not actually all that dissimilar to the UK at the moment. We've just finished our external walk around of the aircraft, so let's head for the cockpit and we'll get the Wilga started up. As we've just discussed, we are currently on the ground here in Buttwil. We're going to be taking the aircraft over towards Grenchen. As you can see for yourselves, it's a somewhat cloudy day out there, but certainly good enough for our flight. Hopefully as well, with the snow coverage, we should get some pretty beautiful views en route as we go. Anyway, we've obviously just boarded the aircraft, so running through the interior inspection checklist. The magneto switch is selected off. Battery and generator switches are both off. Engine controls are full and free. Throttle is set closed, properly reset to high RPM. Mixture is set to idle cutoff. Carb heat is set cold. For the flight controls, we'll just remove the gust lock and work our way through a quick check here of the flight controls. They are full free and in the correct sense. For the doors, we've got the right door there closed and locked. We'll close up the left door as well. And again closed, indicating locked. Seatbelt is secure. For the start itself, the fuel selector will come onto the left tank for the start. Just checking the fuel quantities as well, they should be pretty evenly balanced. We've got about 12 US gallons there on the left. And sure enough, same there on the right. For the cowl and oil cooler shutters, according to the checklist, they should be both open for the start, which does make sense. But I have found it takes quite a bit of time to get some oil temperature into the Wilga's engine. And obviously as well, with it being pretty cold outside, I think we're going to leave both the oil and the cylinder head shutters closed for now. Ultimately as well, I understand that is what the system's for. It's designed for cold weather operation. So again, we'll leave those closed for now. We can always open them up if we start to see a rise in temperature. Carburetor heat is set cold. Cabin heat is selected on. The overvolt and generator protection switches are both on. Battery switch is selected on. We're looking for at least 21 volts there on the battery, showing around 24. For the internal lighting, we'll take the instrument lights on. External lighting, the nav lights and the anti-collision lights can both go on. The oil pressure, fuel pressure and oil air temperature indication switches can all go on. The Wilga is a very typical Eastern Bloc aircraft in as much as there's a switch for pretty much everything in the cockpit. The start checks then, once again the fuel selector on the left tank, prop pitch is set fully forward. We'll come fully back on the joystick, holding the aircraft on the brakes. Starter air valve is open, Interestingly, the Wilga actually uses air for the start. You do need to top that up periodically. You can do so via the clipboard. Once again, the valve is open, air pressure is checked. Again, it's a pretty cold day outside, so we'll prime the engine 5 times. The fuel pump switch can go on. Mixture can go through to fully rich. Max can go on to both. And the start switch can go on. We'll just open up the air vent, give everyone a shout. Clear prop! Prop area is clear, so we can hit the starter. And we do have a good start. The engine modelling on the Wilga is very nice. The engine doesn't always catch on the first try. Anyway, oil pressure has come up, so we'll just feed in the throttle slowly here. We'll come up to around 1000 RPM. Let the engine warm up. The after start checks, the mags are set to both, brakes are holding. Throttle is set. Oil pressure is checked. Nav systems can go on. We'll take the directional gyro, artificial horizon, turn indicator, radio master, and the ADF on. Magnetic compass is selected on, showing 340 versus 340 there on the compass. So nav systems are checked. Oil temperature. Again, just holding our current power setting for now until the oil temperature comes up. You can see that does take quite some time, especially given the present conditions. So we'll leave the engine idling around 1000 RPM for now. We'll slowly increase that as we see a rise in engine temp. The after start checks, the starter switch is off. Fuel pump switch is off. Start air valve is closed. Generator switch can go on. Anti-collision light is selected on. Avionics switches. Just checking we have the desired state there, so stall warning on. Heater heat can go on. And the rest we can leave for now. Artificial horizon we can uncage. For the taxi, we'll set the flaps through to the first notch there, 50%. Fuel selector, we'll just switch over to the right tank. Make sure the engine's operating correctly there on the right. Landing lights are down below. Landing lights can go on. We'll just come back on the throttle, off the brakes. There's really no wind around here today. We've got about 3 knots, so we're just going to make our way here out onto the taxiway. We're going to be departing out to the north, so we'll just swing ourselves here around to the south and carry out the run-up more or less in our present position. Again, fully back on the stick here, just to help keep the tail wheel down on the ground. And you can see the hardened taxiway here transitions into grass, so we'll stay on the hardened surface here for the run-up. Gently onto the brakes, and once again holding the aircraft on the brakes. There's only chocks or brakes in the Wilga, no parking brake technically, although the park brake keybind does work for the chocks here in the aircraft. So just making sure we are all clear behind. And indeed we are. Again, just coming up on that throttle, you can see we're just coming into the amber band now here on the oil temperature. For the run-up itself, we're looking for an oil pressure of between 4 and 6 kilograms per centimetre squared. We're showing around 4.5 currently, and fuel pressure we're looking for 0.2 to 0.5, and currently showing around 0.25. Oil temperature max of 75 degrees, obviously we're not there yet, we're just coming up into the green band now on the oil temperature. Cylinder head temperature we're looking for approximately 210 degrees, we're coming up to about 170 degrees currently. As we are going to be coming up on the power here, we will just open the cylinder head shutters now. Help keep the engine cool here during the run-up. So initially coming through to 2050 on the RPM. Quite a high power setting there, so again just making sure the aircraft is holding on the brakes. You can see that cylinder head temperature coming up quite quickly actually as we come up on the power. There's 2050 cycling the prop. That checks. And coming back now to 1750 to check the mags. There's 1750. We'll come on to the number 2 mag. We're looking there for no more of a drop than 600 RPM, which seems awfully high. I think that's a typo. It mentions 600 RPM as well for the prop lever. Onto the number 1 mag, just flicking slightly too far through there. And coming back to both. So mags are checked, carburetor heat. Is checked, and we'll come back through to the cold position. Carb heat is set cold. And we'll come all the way back to idle. Up into the green now on the oil temperature. And looking good there now as well on the cylinder head temperature. Carb air temp looks good. All the way back through to idle. You can see we have the generator warning light there as well as the RPMs drop off. So again, very nice modelling of the systems overall on the Wilga. Back down to around 450 RPM there at idle. And again, we'll just come back up to around 1000 RPM for now. Engine temperatures are now good for the takeoff. So for the takeoff checks, radio and magnetic compass showing 150 there on the standby. 150 there as well on the radio compass. Prop pitch is set fully forward. Flaps are set, and we'll just visually check those as well. Flaps look good. Cowl and oil cooler shutters, temperatures are now looking good. We'll definitely open both of those up for the takeoff. And the carburetor heat is set closed. As I say, we're going to be departing out to the north here, so we'll just continue the taxi down towards the runway threshold. Once we're down at the threshold, we'll just continue the last of our preparations, and then we'll be on our way. Okay, so we now got ourselves here on the northerly runway. Just take one quick glance at the aircraft systems before we go. So the altimeter is set, attitude indicator is uncaged, radio compass showing around 338 versus around 335 there on the standby compass. Engine temperatures and pressures looking good, transponder set to out. We've got the Villasaur VOR tuned up there on nav 1, and we've got the 249 radial pre-selected on the OBS. We're going to be tracking out towards the VOR for leg 1 of our trip. So once again, off the brakes, feeding in the throttle. The 80 variant of the Wilga certainly has an abundance of power, so you'll see we get the aircraft airborne pretty quickly here. The aircraft just wanting to swing out to the right, but it's controllable on the rudder. There's full power, temperatures and pressures looking good, RPMs checked, just easing the aircraft off. Fairly conservative takeoff there. You can certainly, as I say, get the Wilga airborne in very short order should you so wish. Anyway, climbing away nicely. Once again, temperatures and pressures are checked. Already up through 300 feet, so we'll take the flaps up. And just coming up through 500 feet, so we'll turn on to our first heading. Again, planning on flying the 249 radial. So we'll come on to a heading of 249. Just reducing our power here as well slightly for the climb. You can see there the radial displaying correctly on the OBS. Slightly out to the right of track now, which is to be expected. We'll come on to a heading of 240 initially. And as we discussed, really beautiful scenery. Bit of a smattering of snow coverage around. So there's 240. We'll level off at 4,000 feet for now. It may be that we have to descend again here with the cloud layer. It's pretty low this afternoon. So there's 4,000. We'll trim the aircraft. Just get everything trimmed out. We'll set the autopilot in and then we'll discuss the handling there a little bit more during the takeoff. And of course discuss the Wilga in general as we go. So needing quite a lot of forward trim here currently to get the aircraft leveled off. Good on the speed now. We'll come back to our cruise power setting. Really excellent sounds as well on the aircraft. I'm sure you've noticed that yourselves already. So just keeping a really good eye on this cloud layer. Obviously we don't want to enter into it. Firstly, we don't want to go IFR, and secondly, definitely the potential for some icing today. So the aircraft fairly nicely trimmed now, a little bit right wing heavy. It does seem possible to null that out with rudder trim. I'm not sure whether or not the real world aircraft has rudder trim. I haven't found any controls in the cockpit, but I may have missed that. But again, it is modelled here on the aircraft. I don't mind that. I think that's a good thing in the sim. A lot of aircraft in reality have trim tabs on the rudder, and obviously you can't model that in the sim. At least you can't adjust that in the sim, so I think it's good to have rudder trim nevertheless. Anyway, nicely trimmed out here. Just remembered on the 80 variant there isn't an autopilot, so we're going to be manually flying for the rest of the trip here, which is fine of course. The aircraft is very enjoyable to hand fly. Other variants of the Wilga do come with a very basic autopilot. They just get pitch hold and heading hold. Anyway, we are nicely trimmed. In terms of our temperatures and pressures, everything looking pretty good there for now, so we'll leave the shutters as they are. And nicely established here now on the radial. So we'll come back onto our heading of 249. For the time being, looks as though we're doing pretty well in terms of keeping clear of cloud. So on the subject of the autopilot, I do think it would be nice if we had the option to select various avionics setups from the clipboard. Currently the way it works is you have a number of different aircraft selections via the aircraft menu of the sim. They'll give you different avionics setups. They'll also differentiate between the Polish and English variants of the cockpit. It's fine, but I do think it's a little bit of a shame. It would be nice to be able to, for example, select between Polish and English again via the clipboard, just so that you can enjoy all of the different variants of the Wilga without having to be specific in terms of avionics setup. And same goes with the English cockpit. For example, if you want to fly the 30 or the 35, I forget which it is, then you have to go with the Polish variant, which is the British livery we looked at earlier. I find that a little bit of a shame. It'd be great to have a system similar to AT Simulation's P149, where you can select the language from the cockpit. I'm not sure as to how easy that is to actually achieve though, so it may be a slightly unreasonable request on my part. Anyway, trucking along nicely for now. So as I said, during the takeoff, plenty of power in the 80 variant of the Wilga. Definitely an excellent bush aircraft. You can pretty much land this thing on a dime if you've got a little bit of a headwind as well. And you can really land it on some quite impressive surface conditions as well. I've landed it almost vertically up a hill. So definitely an excellent STOL option, and as you've seen for yourselves, and as we'll discuss more as we go, excellent fidelity. Probably the best STOL option in terms of fidelity within the sim currently. It's a really excellent product on most fronts. Flight modelling is good, systems modelling is very good, sounds are great. Functionality as well is nice. You'll have seen during the introduction there that there are certain little touches that you don't see with other add-ons, some of which are of course a little bit unnecessary, but it certainly goes to show the amount of effort that the devs have put into the product. Anyway, in terms of the flight modelling there during the takeoff, as we were just discussing, lots of power on the 80 variant of the Wilga. The aircraft definitely has a tendency to swing out to the right during the takeoff. That can be corrected quite readily with rudder. In the initial stages of the takeoff, the rudder does feel just a touch sensitive, but that does tend to ease off once you got some airspeed with the tail up, some airflow going over the rudder, at which point the aircraft actually controls quite nicely. In pitch as well, the aircraft felt very nice, easy to keep on the runway should you so wish, but also lifted off very nicely. Just swinging out to the west here to avoid this bank of cloud. It may be as well that we have to duck down again slightly here as we discussed. We'll come down to 3,500 feet for now. So we just passed overhead the Villasal VOR. We're now on a radial of 268, outbound towards Granchen. Cloud coverage has cleared up slightly, although it does look like we have a little bit more out towards the west overhead the airfield. Certainly we've got some slightly nicer views now off the left wing. Again, just absolutely stunning part of the world. And the sim, as always, doing it complete justice, I think. So we've got the highest terrain out towards the left of the aircraft currently, but we are heading towards some high terrain off the nose. Again, no DME, but we've got about a 20-mile leg here, so it's about 14 minutes to run, doing 90 knots currently. We should arrive around 25 minutes to 3 overhead Granchen itself. And although we don't have the DME, we've got some nice visual features to spot en route. We've got a river we'll be crossing over the top of just before we hit the airfield. That might be a little bit trickier to spot today if it is iced up, but essentially the airfield is off the nose just before we hit the hills that we just discussed. So in the meantime, we'll continue on our heading. We're still looking good there on the OBS. Maintaining 3,500 feet for now, again, just due to the cloud coverage. And temperatures and pressures looking good. The cylinder head temperature there, just below 200 degrees. All temperatures sitting nicely there in the middle of the range. Yeah, so overall I really like the flight model of the Wilga. It's an aircraft that's very easy to fly, very capable as well, and it feels good on the controls. It feels about right in terms of its weight and its overall damping on the controls. Just coming through a little bit of cloud here, but still visual for now. Doesn't seem as though we're picking up any icing. Just putting in small deflections there. You can see the aircraft takes a little bit of time to respond. Nothing overzealous. And same is true in pitch. Whilst it is still a little bit pitchy, certainly significantly less so than many other add-ons that we've seen in the sim. So I certainly think that Got Friends have done some nice work with the Wilga. It's one of those aircraft as well where you're always pretty comfortable that you know what it's going to do. It doesn't give you any surprises. There's no particularly strange handling characteristics, which is great. Very easy as well to ride the aircraft on the edge of the stall, which is of course exactly what you want from a stall aircraft, bush aircraft. Once we're overhead Granchen, we may carry out a stall, get a feel for that. And again, we'll just weave our way through the clouds here. Approaching the hills now, so we should be overhead the airfield fairly shortly. Systems fidelity, again, hopefully you've got a good feel for that already there during the startup, but there seems to be a high level of depth to the aircraft systems. Everything seems to work correctly. For example, we saw the generator dropping offline there at low RPM. The air valve is modelled correctly as well. The engine won't start if you don't have the air valve open, at least not with the realistic engine option selected. Nice as well to have the realistic option. Obviously if that's not your thing, then you do have the option as well to run a more simplistic engine model, which makes the aircraft that much easier to operate. You can as well damage the engine apparently. I have yet to do so myself, but if you do run the engine too hot, for example, or at too high a power setting for a prolonged period, then you can ultimately suffer an engine failure. We'll try and come back onto our heading here. We're pretty much on the radial still. We obviously want to come overhead the airfield. Got a fairly built up area down below us. I've got that here on the chart. Can't see the name unfortunately. But again, really just using the hills as a bit of a guidance for now. I think as well you can make out the river there just off our 1 o'clock. Again, as long as we stay on the radial, we'll hit Granchen in due course. We've got about another 3 or 4 minutes to run now. So we'll start keeping a really good eye out. It's going to be pretty tricky to spot, I imagine, today, with the conditions such that they are. We do also have a lake out towards the southwest of the airfield, so we can use that as a little bit of a reference as well. And you can just see the lake there off tower 11 o'clock. So we're just approaching Granchen. We've got the airfield there off tower 11 o'clock. You can see the runway lights. We've got a bit of a break here in the cloud as well, so we'll take the opportunity here to carry out our stall. Come back up on the prop RPM, back up to full throttle. As I've already mentioned, I've got quite a bit of time in the aircraft. I'm pretty confident it handles quite nicely at low speed, but we'll just demonstrate it here for the sake of the video. Get ourselves up to around 4,000 feet. Now I'm just going for a quick power on stall here. Initially we'll just ride the edges of the stall as well, just to demonstrate that. So coming back on the stick, just through 60 knots. There's 50, that's about the edge of the stall. And you can see we've still got some degree of aileron authority. The aircraft is still quite controllable as well, no nasty surprises. Come fully back on the stick though. And the aircraft will drop a wing, going into a right hand spin there. Easy to recover, just coming off the power, easing off the controls. So as I say, no nasty surprises there. The aircraft won't snap on you, which does mean you can make the approach at low speed and have no issues there, which again makes the Wilga a good stall option overall. Anyway, the wind's out from the north. It's an east-west runway, slightly favouring coming in for a left-hand downwind here. I think it's runway 06 from memory. So we'll get ourselves levelled out here once again. Coming back on the prop. And we'll just make our way in here for a left-hand downwind. So as I mentioned a couple of times now, I think the Wilga is a very capable stall option. Perhaps not quite as capable as your more modern stall aircraft, particularly the more specialist stall aircraft, but I certainly think what it lacks ever so slightly in performance, and again it is still a very capable option, what it lacks slightly in performance it certainly makes up for in character. I love the steam gauges, I love the sounds, I love the feel of the aircraft. Really good fun. Great as well having a radial engine stall aircraft, that's pretty special. Anyway, in terms of our fuel state, down to around 4 gallons now there on the right. We'll come through to the left tank once again. Still got around 11 US gallons there on the left. We'll join in here straight onto a downwind. Runway 06. Nice time of the day to be flying as well, just coming up on 2:45. You can see the sun already coming down. We're obviously pretty late on in the year here. Working our way through our downwind checks then, the brakes are checked and off, undercarriage is down, mixture is rich. Fuel pump will leave off, that wasn't on the takeoff items for the checklist. And again, the fuel state is checked. Landing light is on, flight instruments are checked, and harness is secure. We're a little bit tight in here for our downwind, so we'll just ease the heading out to the right. Give ourselves a little bit more room here to turn on to final. We've got 3 runways here at Granchen. We've got 1 hardened runway and 2 grass runways. We'll take the hardened runway today, obviously with the conditions as they are. And we'll just track outbound a couple of seconds longer here before we turn on to final. Start coming back off the power as well. And we'll take a stage of flap. The flaps in the Wilga are great. Full flap is very much like a speed brake. You can kill off all your speed very quickly. So again, really helping with the stall performance of the aircraft. We'll just go with half flaps for now though. We'll keep around 70 knots here, initially down final approach. We'll clear on final. Obviously visibility in the turn isn't great in the aircraft with the high wing configuration. And we're just going to avoid again here taking carb heat, since it's not bound, as I say, to the sim controls. Ordinarily though, we'd want that here at low engine power. Temperatures and pressures looking good. We'll close up the shutters. Quite helpfully, they're actually bound to the spoiler controls in the sim. So they are now closed. Slightly high still here on the PAPI. We'll take full flap. You'll notice the aircraft balloons quite a bit there, and the speed falling off. We'll maintain around 60 knots for now. So pitch is full fine, undercarriage is down, flaps are set, landing clearance not required, the runway is clear. For the sake of demonstration here, I'll try and keep the landing roll as short as I can. We'll try and touch down on the numbers. Slightly reduced forward visibility here with the windshield pillars. Obviously you can work around those a little bit easier as well with track IR. Getting down the PAPI, but we're going to dip slightly low here again with the aim of touching down on the numbers. Feels as though we've got a slight crosswind out here from the right. Again though, just a couple of knots. It's off the power, let's touch down, onto the brakes. And as you can see, we can stop the Wilga pretty much on a dime. Okay, so we just vacated runway 06, the flaps can come up. And we've got an AN2, interestingly, here on the ground in Granchen, so we'll go and park up next to our Eastern Bloc neighbour. We'll just swing ourselves around here and get ourselves parked outside of the hangar. Hopefully one day we'll see the AN2 in the sim. I know it was due to come at some point with HE simulations, but I think they've got more pressing things to worry about currently. So onto the brakes. Once again, just holding the aircraft on the brakes. And in fact, we can set the chocks, as I say, just using the park brake binding there. So back up to 1000 RPM. The afterlanding checks, the flaps are up. Transponder is off, landing light can come off. And for the shutdown checks, we'll get our avionics off. So directional gyro can come off, artificial horizon, turn coordinator, radio and ADF. Stall warning as well. We'll leave the engine gauges for now, pitot heat can come off, and the rest can stay on. Engine temperatures and pressures looking good, we'll pull the mixture. Good shutdown there on the engine, nice effects as well, you'll notice a little bit of wobble there from the aircraft as we shut down. Max can come off, throttle is closed, fuel selector is off. And again, just working our way through the overhead, so instrument lights off, oil air, fuel and pressure gauges all off. Anti-collision light off, generator, and the battery master off. So there you go, ladies and gents. I do hope you enjoyed our outing in the PZL-104 Wilga. Once again, a very nice product from Got Friends. I really enjoyed the Discus 2C, and I'm certainly really enjoying the Wilga thus far as well. I think we got a pretty good chance to talk about the product as we went, but nevertheless I'll try and cap off the review just with a few thoughts on the product. I don't have a whole lot here that I can add in terms of negative points, but nevertheless I'll just cover a few things before we move on to our positives and finish up the review. Most of my negative points with the aircraft are rather ancillary in nature. I didn't find anything directly grossly wrong with the product. I'll just work through a few points though, not really in any particular order. Firstly, starting with the aircraft manual, I did find that to be a little bit thin on the ground in terms of detail. Firstly, there didn't seem to be an awful lot of explanation in terms of where various cockpit controls are located, so I did find myself looking around. For example, it took me quite a while to find the fuel gauges located on the upper surface of the wing. The manual also doesn't include a set of checklists, which I found to be a bit of a shame. I always like to see those included, but they are included within the sim itself. In terms of the cockpit, again very nice to have the 3 variants. As I mentioned during the flight, it would be nice, if possible, to be able to switch between the different variants using the clipboard as opposed to having to select them from the sim menu. I'm not sure whether or not that would be feasible, but certainly it would be nice to be able to switch between the English and the Polish language cockpits using the clipboard, and I know that's possible, as AT Simulations did the same with their P149D. It's not a major issue of course, but it does mean you can't necessarily enjoy all of the variants in the package if you're not willing, for example, to work your way through the Polish language cockpit. The sounds by and large I thought were excellent on the aircraft, and I do think, having watched it back, that the recording doesn't really do them justice, so just be aware of that. The only area of the sounds that I would complain about a little bit, again the aircraft makes use of the default sim ground handling sounds. I've discussed this now in many reviews. Whilst the sounds do fit in okay with this particular aircraft, again they just break the immersion for me when I hear them at this point. I don't really care for them overall. And it is just a little bit of a shame, as for me it does ever so slightly taint what is otherwise a really great sound package. In terms of the visual modelling, not a whole lot I can really critique there. Again the aircraft looks absolutely excellent. The only thing I did notice is the prop hub animation. Not the best I've seen. If you go back and watch some of the external shots during the flight, you might notice that for yourselves. Again though, ultimately we're talking about pretty minor details here. The ground handling of the aircraft generally felt pretty good. It was a little bit snappy in the turns and on the brakes I found. And as ever in the sim, the Wilga does have a slight tendency to lurch out to the right during the takeoff, but it's certainly very controllable. And overall, as I said, the rudder didn't feel too bad in terms of its response. One other very minor gripe, and really this is more of a request or a personal preference. I was actually really hoping to make the flight here with a glider tow. A nice little functionality of the product. The Wilga can actually be used for the default glider tow in the sim. You can also use the aircraft to tow a friend's glider online, for example using the Got Friends Discus 2C or anything using Kinetic Assistant. I had hoped though, and expected really, that given the nature of the Wilga we might also be able to tow an AI glider. Whilst I certainly can't critique Got Friends for not including such an option, and indeed I'm not entirely sure whether or not it is possible to achieve that in the sim, if it is, I do think it would be a nice option to have with the Wilga. One other area which I would like to see improved, although I will say that I think already the product is above average in this regard, it would be nice to see a little bit more vibration, camera effects, overall motion from the aircraft. There were certain points where this was quite noticeable, for example during the engine shutdown, but it would be nice with this old Eastern Bloc, rugged, hard-working aircraft to see more vibration throughout the flight, particularly during the takeoff for example. As I say, I think the Wilga is already above average in this regard, but certainly if Got Friends do want to improve the product just that little bit further, I think personally that would be a good avenue worth investing in. Anyway, that's just about all I can really think of in terms of negatives, and as you can see, not really a whole lot there. It's mostly just preferences and suggestions on my part. I did also have one issue with the aircraft when I first loaded it into the sim. Some of the controls and click spots weren't working correctly. Having reloaded the aircraft though, I haven't had any similar circumstances since, so we're not going to dwell on that particularly much during this review. Otherwise though, positives. Once again, I do think that the 104 is a very high quality offering from Got Friends. I really enjoyed the aircraft. I think it looks excellent, it sounds excellent, it flies very nicely, the system's fidelity is great as well. Nice as well to see something slightly different in the sim. It's not every day you get a radial engine Eastern Bloc STOL aircraft. So I've certainly very much been enjoying the novelty factor, and I do think this is one of the better GA aircraft, certainly one of the best STOL aircraft we've seen in the sim to date. Visual modelling is very good, both inside and out. Nice as well to see the additional features that we've already discussed. I really like the way the aircraft looks both internally and externally. The sounds, with the exception mentioned earlier, are excellent, and again I don't think they quite come across in the video, but internally and externally, a very nice sounding aircraft with the Wilga. Flight model generally very good. As always, it does have some of the usual Microsoft Flight Simulator shortfalls, but Got Friends do seem to have worked around most of those quite successfully. There's nothing too egregious in terms of the flight modelling. As stated, the Wilga is a very easy, very enjoyable aircraft to hand fly. The aircraft handles well in the low speed regime, which is great for a STOL aircraft, and as we demonstrated there during the landing, you can certainly get the aircraft down in a very short amount of space. The takeoff roll isn't necessarily anything special by modern STOL standards, but still a very capable aircraft nevertheless. The systems fidelity of the aircraft is also very good. Again, really nice to see, for example, the engine modelling, the engine damage. The cylinder head temperature, the oil temperature all seem to behave very plausibly. The aircraft seemed to respond as well quite appropriately to opening and closing the engine shutters. The aircraft features are also nice. Again, we have the external fixtures and fittings, the smoke generator, the onboard kneeboard, the guitar, the hammock, the cooking equipment as well. A nice little touch, obviously not hugely useful, but again I do think it does demonstrate the amount of effort that Got Friends have put into the Wilga. There is maybe also a little bit of room for improvement with the aircraft effects. You do get the heat blare off the exhaust, which is great. I didn't notice any smoke there during the startup, but in fairness the exhausts are fitted quite far back from the pilot. But it would have been nice as well to see, for example, some dirt kicked up by the wheels, a little bit of smoke there on touchdown as well. In terms of the aircraft's FPS, the Wilga is very frame rate friendly. I was getting around 70 FPS in the 104 versus around 73 FPS in the default Cessna 152. So the Addon very much on a par with the default aircraft, which is great to see, and it makes it a very nice option as well for any VR users. Anyway, in short, I was very impressed with the Got Friends Discus 2C at the time when that released. I think it's an excellent product, I still very much enjoy it. And certainly that's very much the case here as well with the Wilga. The product does retail at $35 US, which by modern flight simulator standards is up towards the higher end of the price bracket. And whilst I do feel that the pricing here of the product versus something like the 737 is on the higher end, overall I certainly feel like you're getting great value for money. The Wilga is certainly something different, as I say, and I find it to be a very enjoyable, very satisfying aircraft to operate. The aircraft fits very nicely into the sim as well. It's great for low and slow flying. With the bush tyres and the float variant as well, you can explore most areas of the Microsoft Flight Simulator world. So I'm fairly sure I'm going to be spending quite a few more hours in this aircraft myself, and certainly if you're into your GA aircraft, particularly your STOL aircraft, I imagine you'll have some great fun with the Wilga as well. Once again, thank you very much to Got Friends for letting us take a look at the aircraft here today. Thank you to all of you as well for watching. A special thank you as well, as ever, to my channel members and patrons for all of your support. I do hope that all of you are having a great day wherever you are. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.